Have you ever heard of the Buster Sword, or do you know what one of these characters are? A chocobo. Well, in today's episode, we are going to talk to you about the beloved series Final Fantasy, and whether if it's good or not for children's mental health. Let's go.
All right, so one of my patients walked into my office a couple weeks ago, and turns out that they're very much into Final Fantasy, that game. I know it's a series of games, and the parents didn't really know much about it. I didn't really know much about it. So can you give us the basics, and then we can jump into a conversation about what I should be asking this patient and how it might be affecting them from a mental health perspective? Dr. Shane?
So Final Fantasy is a series of in the larger realm of genres in the RPG, so the role-playing games. But it is actually more specifically under a subcategory called JRPGs, which are based in Japan. That's where they originated. There's a lot of Japanese cultural themes that were originally incorporated into it. A lot of initial art styles and mythology, stuff like that. But since then, it traveled over to the United States and it's really, really taken off. Now, one of the things that it gets mocked for a lot is they keep saying Final Fantasy. It has not been final for I don't know how many numbers now. So that was hilarious. We still joke about that in the gaming circles. It's like, how final is this? We're up to number 16 now and remaking number 7 into 3 different games.
Oh.
But it started off really, really early on. I don't remember the year when it first originated, or even honestly the year it came into the United States, but it was quite a while ago. It started off with the tiny little pixelated characters, so very basic graphics. It was really much based on kind of like Dungeons and Dragons type of things, in that characters had different classes, and the different classes could they had different abilities in things that they could do. They could level up their powers. And you could sort of customize the characters in the sense that you could attach different weapons and equipment and armor and stuff that will enhance certain powers or give them certain abilities. And the whole strategy with those games is to try to figure out like what combination of equipment and abilities and stuff to mush together to get the most bang out of your buck in battles and stuff like that. But every single one of the games is very well known for having an engrossing plot that is very emotionally triggering. It's some of them get a little wild. There's some plots that are really kind of out there, and you kind of have to really think outside the box to get what's going on, and sometimes it doesn't always make sense. But all the characters, almost all the characters are actually very well developed. You get to learn background information about them, what's going on with them, what their thinking process is, how they fit into the big picture. So the writing for Final Fantasy games has always been really, really well done. And then, of course, as the game progressed, you start introducing voice actors.
Fine then. Come or don't come, it's your decision.
What am I supposed to say? You tell me it's my decision. But I don't have a choice, do I?
You start introducing fantastic music. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say start. The music has always been well known to be very good. The original composer for Final Fantasy, Nobuo Uematsu, he's still famous within the gaming community for the phenomenal music that he comes up with. I mean, to this day, you play the original Crystal Anthem of Final Fantasy in the concerts, and there will be tears streaming down people's eyes, and people holding hand to their hearts because it just evokes such a strong emotional feeling for them. But now it's progressed to, obviously taking advantage of a lot of fantastic graphics. The plot is still very much there. Every single new game, you're like, all right, what's the story this time? Because there's always some type of a story. There's always some type of very engrossing character. But now you get a lot more opportunity to customize the characters. There's usually mods that, give you certain skins or equipment or clothing that you can choose for them. Still different abilities, but those core elements has always carried different classes, different abilities, different equipment and combinations that you put together.
When you talk about plot, I believe this is one of those games, and Grand Theft Auto is another one, and there are many other ones where, as you play the game, there are cutaway scenes. I forget what they're actually called.
Cutscenes. They're called cutscenes.
Cutscenes. And so there is an element of almost you're playing, but you're also kind of watching a movie in the sense, because during those cutscenes, there's nothing you can do. You just sit and watch the characters interact, and that's how the plot gets advanced. So can you just tell us a little bit about the concept of a cutscene and how that affects gameplay and how that traces to people caring perhaps more about the characters than you would in a game like Mario, where you're just going from front to end and you're not really building a storyline?
The cutscenes, they give you that kind of more immersive feel in that it brings you into the story. It's a way for how movies and TV shows, they have the exposition scene where they explain the background of this or explain the technicalities of what's going on. The games use the cutscenes a lot to explain the background, like usually a lot of times it's like a flashback type of scene where you find out about in the past what happened with this character, how did they get to this point where they are, where you're meeting them, how is this event that is that you're currently involved in, why does this affect it based on something that's happened before. Sometimes a very emotional aspect of the game that they're about to introduce in a story, like a death of a character or a really traumatic loss, or something really dramatic, like, an explosion that kills a lot of people or something like that, or the end of a battle. Like you finally beat a boss and there's a dramatic ending to how, you deal the final blow and the aftermath of that, some magic happening or something like that. So it kind of brings you that extra element in the story that you're not going to be able to get if you're just on your controller.
The Princess is in Another Castle is the original version I could think of a cutscene, right? And that just happens right there. It's not even a cutaway. Now it's more like watching a movie. And this is a good segue into something that you posted in our Facebook Sight Child Clinicians group lately, which was the article about a real character dying that caught people off guard when they were watching a cutscene, and how people emotionally responded to that.
So that was Final Fantasy VII, which is one of the most beloved games in that series. Probably one of the best selling too, I believe. I don't know the exact numbers on that. But it was really dramatic because it was sudden. Like you did not see it coming. And the character that dies, Aerith, was one of the most beloved characters. And to suddenly lose her in such a dramatic way, it was shocking, really, for all the players. No one anticipated that to happen. So it was like losing a beloved friend all of a sudden, and all the grief and the shock and all that kind of along with that.
Yeah, because I want to highlight, and I love Dr. Chang's just positivity and optimism and just like passion for this, because I share very similar passions. Final Fantasy, I grew up on Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VII was the first PlayStation game, and it was the first Final Fantasy to come to PlayStation in 1997 that changed the fields of how we see RPGs, because it was the first 3D RPG. 3D Final Fantasy. So, right, really brought gamers who wanted to experience something visually stimulating,
Right.
that basically brought a whole new population. But you connect with these players, and spoiler alert for all of those who are watching, right? Aerith dies in the original Final Fantasy, and that's in the middle of the game, right? It's not at the end, and it's a big twist on the typical hero saving the princess kind of feeling. because she was a part of your party. You could choose to play with her or not play with her. You could level her up. And then all of a sudden she's gone. And we're talking like 40 to 45 hours into the game that you have committed.
Now, you hear about parents who are like, I don't know, they're up there playing a game and all of a sudden they're yelling or all of a sudden this or that. Like, how could parents know or kind of, because this, if it does take the toll of like losing a friend, then that could really affect that patient's evening or week or whatever. And then they go play the game and they come downstairs and they're in a different mood or they're sad. Would it be appropriate for a parent to somehow ask if something happened in the game that they're playing, whatever it is? I don't know how that conversation could even be thought to have with parents, but I mean, I guess it traces back to knowing what your kid's playing.
Well, we have it all the time, right? Talk about reading a book with a 7-year-old or a 9-year-old, right? Who's reading Harry Potter, right? Or a 10-year-old who's reading Harry Potter. And they get to the point where, again, spoiler alert, at the end of the 6th book, right? This Dumbledore dies, like in that gripping moment, right? When Dumbledore dies and the kid has to grapple with death, right? That's a perfect opportunity to sit and be like, what is that like? What do you understand about that, right? That's the same type of conversation you could do with video games.
Right. You have to be, but you would have to, if you know that your kid is playing a game with a storyline or a plot and characters, then you'd have to know perhaps to ask them from time to time, what's happening in the game? Tell me about the plot, any new developments. I don't know if a parent could do that if the kid would be, some kids I think would be interested to tell them, and the parents would never think to ask that. It's no different though than reading a book. Ask them about the plot.
Yeah.
How would you word that? I mean, if you were instructing a parent, or if you as a parent knew that your kid was playing this and you weren't playing the whole game with them, but you wanted to develop a connection or dialogue with them about.
I mean, this gets back to the very root of, every time we bring this up, parents need to be involved. Parents need to know what their kids are doing, what the content is, who they're doing things with. It's no different than if, kids are reading books that the parents have, they don't know if their kids are reading proper books or pornography books or, whatever, graphical novels with explicit content. What kind of music are they listening to? Are they sneaking into movie theaters watching NC-17 movies? What's going on with them and their friends at school? This is all part of parents need to be aware and involved and ask. They need to be asking, how was your school today? How are things with friends? How was, baseball practice? What books are you reading right now? Watching what kind of TV shows they're being exposed to? It's no different.
I think it's hard because there's so much out there and kids are just bombarded, right? Buy this, look at this new trend, like, eat this. And it's so hard for kids not to be like, to filter it out, right? This is why I always say delay social media later on. This is why I say, like, if you're there are rating systems in places for certain reasons, but like we're not even that good at that either. This is why it's so important that if a parent is going to buy something, if they're going to invest in something, they open it with the kid, they play with the kid when the kid's playing, right? They close it and realize the transitions with the kid. And it's tough because there's so many demands on parents, and these things can often be seen as a virtual babysitter or something that just gives them the peace of mind just to cook dinner. I've done it too. But it is a really important thing to play and really be involved.
But if you have a 16-year-old kid who's up there with his headset playing Fortnite or Call of Duty with his friends, he's not going to want you to sit in his room and watch him play.
No, but you're going to want to watch when the game ends. So when the rounds are over, you're going to want to watch how he connects in the lobby to other people. Does he connect to strangers or not? Right? This is all important for the parent to kind of get a better understanding of. It's the same argument about saying, hey, I'm going to send my kid out to the playground. I'm just going to send them. Right? I'm not going to look after them. I'm not going to see who they're interacting with. I'm not going to think about the other adults in there. Right? I'm just going to send them. People would say, why would you do that? You're a parent. You are responsible. You have to know where they are. Right? Watch them. We are trained for that. We are not trained for this. And that's what I'm saying. We have to be better at getting involved in this.
And if they don't want to show you, or if they say, no, get out of my room, then you need to take it upon yourself to go learn a little bit on your own about it. Maybe watch the Psych Child video about that game or something else. All right. But taking it back to basics here.
Yeah.
So I've learned over time, I don't play video games, but I've learned as a clinician, somebody says they play Minecraft, it's like a reflex. I say, oh, do you do creative or survival? I know to
Yeah.
ask that question, and that their face usually lights up just a little bit. And that's a good inroad to starting to talk about them. And then I might ask them about their skin. I know the term skin, and that means what does their character look like? How do they design their character?
Yep.
Fortnite, I know to ask, did you do battle royales? Do you do duos? You play with a headset. What's your skin? You can ask what's your emotes, depending on. But you want to demonstrate a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of interest. So Final Fantasy now, what are your follow-up 2 or 3 questions that you would ask them to express interest and demonstrate that you are care about the game?
I think Dr. Cheng and I might have a different approach to this because she sees more young adults and older adults, whereas I see more of the kids, younger kids. So they're probably the kids that I see who are going to be below the age of 18 are probably going to be more exposed, right, to 2 entries in the Final Fantasy series. They're going to be more exposed to Final Fantasy 16, which recently came out. It's the latest installment in the series. Remember, this is an anthology series. None of the games follow each other. They're all their own
Oh, really?
universes.
It's not
Yeah,
an ongoing story?
not an ongoing story.
Oh.
So these are all individual anthologies with hundreds of characters in each game that live in their own universe. There's no cross interaction, right?
Mm.
So Final Fantasy 16, I would say, if they're saying, yeah, I played Final Fantasy 16, right? Then I would say, like, okay, like, what do you think about the battle system compared to the other Final Fantasies, right? Because that's like the defining feature of it. And then the second thing is what do you think about like kind of the medieval kind of setting? And those can be just 2 kind of standoff points, and then you can kind of start driving off whatever they say, right?
Sure.
Or you can even make it even more basic. Hey, I know it's a newer game, Final Fantasy series. Who's the hero in it?
Yeah.
Who's the villain?
Yeah.
Right? What are some of the things you can do in the game besides fighting people?
We live in an age where we have Google and YouTube and internet. It is so easy for a parent to glean some basic information about a game. I mean, literally for every single Final Fantasy game, you go onto YouTube, you will find a ton of people who will do like a 10-minute video and will take you through all the cutscenes and explain the entire plot and the game and even review the game, like talking about the characters and the battle system and everything for you. 10 minutes, watch that. You now know a ton of information about the game that you can bring up with your kid.
Coming back to like the questions, right? The games you want to ask about, right?
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 16 and the other game is Final Fantasy 7 Remastered. It is a remake of Final Fantasy 7 from 1997. Yeah.
Technically
PlayStation
3
5.
games.
It's
Or,
technically
I mean, yeah,
broken into
that's a
3.
whole other thing. Like the remastered is a third of the
Okay.
original Final Fantasy remade. And then it's actually a trilogy. So
Yep.
number 2 just came out called Rebirth, and that changed the original story.
Yep.
I
Okay.
won't give any spoilers. And we have no idea what number 3 is gonna be like because that hasn't come out yet. But
All right.
Yeah.
So there's things specific to the newest ones, which is good to know. But for a parent who doesn't want to
16 and
memorize,
7. And then Dr. Chang can talk more about maybe what her young and older adults play.
okay. But are there some questions that would be applicable no matter which one, such as which character do you play as, or what skin do you like?
No, it's not universally applicable because each game might come with a different class of characters, right? Each game is going to come with different themes in general. Yeah. Lucia, you want to talk about pros of Final Fantasy?
Mental health ban.
fun. It is immersive. It's pretty safe Most of the games are you play by yourself. It's not a lot of most of them don't have a very online social aspect. There's some where you can do a little bit of multiplayer involvement, but primarily it's a single player game. Most of the time. Also some of them you have to pay for online subscription and stuff like that. There is a Final Fantasy MMORPG, which is not really part of the Final Fantasy series plot as well. There's a movie as well. So it's all sort of stuff. It teaches a lot of kind of soft skills, strategy. It teaches resource management. It teaches puzzle solving. There's sometimes a lot of puzzles that you have to figure out to solve to get past a certain stage or something like that. So it's good for a soft skill.
I will highlight the cons of it is that one, in the MMORPG, it's an MMORPG, so you're interacting with people on public servers, right? So you don't know where they're coming from. There are moderators, but moderators aren't a foolproof way to keep your kids safe. Number two,
Are you saying there's no way to play Final Fantasy without being exposed to? You can't just do it on your own.
No. Final Fantasy like 11 or some of the entries are MMORPGs or online games. Other versions are single player. So you really need to figure out if somebody says, I play Final Fantasy, you're like, which number do you play?
Okay, you got to ask that. Okay, good. Yeah, it's important. And can you play with your friends only or your cousins at their house? Is it one of those ones where you could? No.
It's not typically like a private server that you get on. These are public servers where there are quests being conducted. And it's like, think of World of Warcraft, kind of that similarity.
Okay, yeah, so some cons, other cons.
Yeah, and then the other cons is that there are adult themes in it, right? Final Fantasy 10 dealt with like death and the afterlife and like what does that mean, right? So for like 6 or 7 year old, that might be hard to understand, right? But like there's also a lot of eroticism of a lot of the characters, pornographic material of a lot of the characters, right? So that's also important if you have teenagers who are, having issues with pornography and they're playing a lot of these games, like that might be an area you might need to venture down and like inquire about as well. The industry is trying to fight back against this and say this is not like something, what's it called? We're trying to fight against this, but again, it's prevalent, it's everywhere. And then, so that's kind of like your main two cons in my opinion about these games.
Well, there you have it. Final Fantasy is an anthology series that takes gamers and puts them into the worlds of medieval conquerors and heroes trying to save the day. From beautiful music that has concerts going all around the world to the incredible character design and stories that can crush your heart, Final Fantasy has both online and single-player campaigns that players can enjoy. However, there are some concerns, primarily due to the eroticization of characters, as well as the excessive online gameplay that can lead to video game dependence. If you'd like to learn more about any video games that we cover here or social media topics, follow us on SiteChild on any of our socials or at our website. Have a good one.